I'm Leanne Crotcha, Canada's co-chair of Denton's Canada's Mining Group. Today, I'm joined by two members of our Vancouver mining team. They're going to be speaking on one of the trends we've identified in Denton's series of Trends in Mining for 2021, national security-related decisions in mineral exploration and development. I'd like to introduce Robin Long and Brian Abraham.
Thanks, Leanne. One trend that we have been seeing in the mining space is an increased focus and review by governments of mining-related transactions for reasons of national security. In Canada, non-Canadians who acquire control of existing Canadian businesses are subject to the Investment Canada Act and must submit either a notification or an application for review. One of the stated purposes of the Act is to provide for the review of investments in Canada by non-Canadians that may be injurious to our national security. A recent and key decision of the federal government under the Investment Canada Act, which connected a national security-based review and the mining sector, involved Toronto-based TMAC Resources. By way of a background, in 2018, TMAC developed the Doris Gold Mine in Hope Bay, Nunavut, and following a strategic review by the company, had been looking for a buyer of the mine and its related assets, which included processing camps, satellite communication facilities, airstrips, and a tidewater port. Earlier in the year, TMAC was approximately $700 million in debt and required capital to meet the requirements of its credit facility and also to fix certain operational issues in connection with recoveries from its mill. In a transaction that was approved by TMAC's key shareholders, TMAC and Shanghai-based Shandong Gold Mining Company announced a deal where Shandong would pay approximately $230 million to acquire TMAC. So in October of last year, TMAC received notice that Canada would be conducting a national security review of the transaction under the Investment Canada Act. And then in December, the federal government announced that the transaction would not be allowed to proceed. Canada has declined to comment further on the transaction and the decision, citing the confidentiality provisions of the Act, but there were likely a number of key factors at play. The first and obvious concern was likely that Shandong is a Chinese state-owned entity, and there's been increasing concern in various industry sectors in Canada and in other countries of acquisitions by entities which are controlled in whole or in part by the CCP. Chinese companies, including state-owned entities, have been active buying precious metal resources, and Shandong in 2015 agreed to back a Beijing initiative to stockpile gold as a means of hedging against economic volatility in China. The second reason was likely the strategic location of the Doris mine. As noted, the mine is situated in Hope Bay, near tidewater and along Canada's Northwest Passage, which, as a result of climate change, is becoming increasingly free of ice pack during the summer months, and consequently destined to become a key shipping route linking the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans. Canada has long sought to protect its sovereignty over the Arctic and the Northwest Passage against threats from other nations, and the acquisition would have provided a Chinese state-owned entity with access to key facilities in the region, including port and airstrips. The third consideration was likely also connected to the location of the Doris mine near Canada's military presence in Cambridge Bay, which is less than 100 kilometers from Hope Bay, and the location of one of the bases comprising the early warning radar system, which Canada operates together with the US. The base at Cambridge Bay transmits a stream of military data to command centers in the south, and it's speculated that the Americans may have pressured Canada to block the transaction. And lastly, the perception of the Canadian public was likely a key factor in Canada's decision. The relations between Canada and China have soured over the past year, and Canadian perception of China has changed as well, particularly as a result of the imprisonment of the two Michaels. In a recent poll, 75% of Canadians opposed more Chinese investment in natural resources here in Canada. So one of the trends I think we can expect to see in the mining sector is a closer review and scrutiny for reasons of national security of mining deals here in Canada, particularly which involve critical minerals and where the buyer is a Chinese state-owned entity. The Shandong transaction involved a particular set of circumstances, but I think until the relations and the public perception of China improve, more deals will be subject to similar reviews. For some time now, Chinese interest in investment has played a key role in the marketing and sale of Canadian mining assets, and reviews of this type could increase uncertainty, dampen interest, and cause Canadian miners to look to other options for investment. So we have been talking about the trend in Canada, but in the US, one of the key policy goals of the Trump administration for reasons of national security was to reduce the Americans' reliance on imports of critical minerals and rare earth elements. The supply of rare earth elements is currently dominated by China, and the elements are key components in the manufacturing of certain tech products, which are essential to the US economy. I also wanted to briefly note that Chile and Australia have raised similar concerns regarding investments in the mining sector by state-owned entities. Australia has also seen its relationship with China deteriorate over the past year and has recently changed the way foreign investment, including in the mining space, is considered. The changes involve a mandatory review by Australia's Foreign Investment Review Board for any transaction which may affect Australia's national security, and the ability to actually unwind transactions even after they've been approved by the board. So these changes and the resulting decisions of the board have caused a certain amount of concern in Australia's mining sector, and which for many years has benefited from a significant amount of Chinese investment into the sector.
Thank you, Robin. Brian, as Robin spoke about, the TMAC Shandong transaction involved the potential purchase by a Chinese SOE of mining assets in a strategic location in Canada. Do you have any other examples of mining transactions in Canada that might be blocked under the Investment Canada Act for reasons of national security?
Sorry. One area where I can see governments getting concerned about this is in the rare earth elements, because China controls better than 90% of the rare earth elements, which are absolutely critical to not just computers, but all sorts of what I call technical data processing capacity. Another thing, though, that we have to bear in mind is that Canada is not alone in its concern with respect to such things as national security. For example, in the United States, foreign entities are prohibited from building mines in areas where there happens to be nearby military installations. So it's not just economic concerns that have been arisen. In addition, there's other things that I would describe as no-go areas. For example, certain parts of the world are subject to what I call insurgency, rebel activity, such things again as concerns where governments are concerned about border areas. For example, in parts of Latin America and probably parts of Africa as well, there's concern about developing mines in what are called border areas, because while we may think of these borders as being clearly defined, often they're not. And so I think what we're seeing is not just the concern about certain elements, but we're concerned about security and also what happens in areas where the government is concerned about its ability to govern. And that includes obviously areas where, for example, you have drug activity, et cetera.